Welcome into the Door Report. It is episode 196. It is a Thursday night, December the 8th, 2022. It hasn't stopped raining for the past week, so a little seasonal depression here in Nashville, but we're back and better than ever. A little week off, probably weekly episodes from here on out after football season, but we are, as always, powered by Alaco Fine Wood Floors, family owned and operated for more than 2 decades. Alaco Fine Wood Floors is Nashville and Middle Tennessee's choice for premium quality hardwood floors. Since 1995, Jimmy Alaco and his army of employees have embodied the approach of taking pride in one's craft and providing superior customer service, growing from a one-man shop to a team of 23 professionals who share the founder's passion for quality craftsmanship and customer satisfaction. If you're interested in contacting them, you can find their headquarters at 2505 Winford Avenue out in Berry Hill, or you can call them at 615-356-0303, or look at their website, alacofinewoodfloors.com. Alaco Fine Wood Floors, serving Middle Tennessee's hardwood flooring needs since 1995. And guys, Trevor, Hulan, Will Byrum here with you tonight on this Thursday night. We've got a lot to get into. It's amazing what you have to talk about after a week off of not doing a podcast, but kind of in recovery mode for football season. We'll talk about the latest Vandy football commits. I think we've got 2 to talk about, and one of them, guys, I think I'm pretty excited about, and Vandy fans should be too. We'll talk about some of the transfer portal targets, positions of need after this Vanderbilt football season. We'll kind of dive into the roster a little bit and kind of put ourselves in Barton Simmons' shoes and kind of look at what Vanderbilt needs here in the offseason. And then we'll talk some hoops. Vanderbilt basketball pulled one out last night somehow against Pitt, 1-point victory. So we'll get into that, guys. But another Thursday night TDR after dark. Guys, I know it's been a week, but I think it's good we've had some time to kind of stew over the football season. But I told you guys before the episode this will be mostly football and probably not as much basketball. But, guys, I think I'm glad they got a win, because this would be maybe not as upbeat if Vanderbilt would have lost to Pitt last night.
At some point, Billy and Trevor, the football dust should settle and we can fully shift over to
Yeah, it
basketball
hasn't yet.
season. And I
Yes.
think it was good waiting until Thursday night to really see what's going on in the transfer portal, because it is, in one word, insane. There are
Unbelievable.
over 1,200
Yeah.
FBS names that have entered into the transfer portal. There are 129 FBS teams with 85 scholarships each. That's like 10,900 scholarships or somewhere around there. So like 12 to 15% of the overall player FBS current players have entered into the transfer portal. Now, not all of them are scholarship players, but Vanderbilt, for the most part, it's been relatively quiet. I think outside of Ray Davis, which is a huge splash. So I'm not trying to diminish that at all. But other than that, compared to every other team, including teams like Bama, that you haven't seen in the past be ravaged by it, I mean, it's just perpetual free agency. Billy, I think if you rewind to this podcast like 2 years when all of this one free transfer rule stuff started, I talked about that over and over and over. And I wasn't opposed to it, because I'm a fan of these guys having more freedom to move to more advantageous situations. But this was coming a mile, 100. You could see it coming from a mile away. I messed up that phrase there as I was trying to think of something more clever to say. But it's like, if you didn't think that this was going to happen and it's just going to keep getting worse until at some point this bubble bursts and players start to see that there just simply aren't enough spots for transfers. I mean, if you don't see that and didn't see that coming, then I have some beachfront property to sell you here in Tennessee and Nashville, Tennessee as well, because it is the most obvious thing that you could have seen coming, just like how the NIL stuff is coming into these funds that are offered to these guys, and NIL deals are part of the transfer process and part of the recruiting process, even though over and over and over it was assured that it wasn't going to be. And I'm not saying this is an issue. I'm just saying that old heads need to get used to a completely different NCAA football offseason. It just is. It's not how it used to be. Teams are going to look drastically different. The idea of building a roster from the ground up with recruits coming in as freshmen is the modern equivalent of building through the NBA or NFL draft. With the advent of modern free agency in professional sports, this is the same thing in college sports, and it's just going to keep becoming more and more like this. So that's my rant on the overall state of college football and what's going on, and having the dust settle around this Vanderbilt roster. It's going to lead to a lot of rambling and a lot of discussions going into the 2023 season that doesn't even sound real as a year. So it's really throwing me off saying that about a roster being in 2023 because it's just not a real year.
Well, yeah, guys, I think Barton Simmons has positioned Vanderbilt pretty well right now. And if you're a Vanderbilt fan, you've got to put your trust in him. And that's what Coach Lee has done. And I think Vandy fans should be excited. Now, I'm not saying Vandy's going to pick up a bunch of splash guys out of the portal, but they're going to get 6, 7, maybe 8 guys, and they're bringing them in, and they're going to help the team. So, I think they have positioned themselves well enough. Like, not every college program has a GM. I mean, Vanderbilt Clarkley did that for a reason. He knew this is where the college game was going, and he did that for a reason. So we'll get into that, guys. We got a lot to get into. Again, we'll talk basketball towards the end. Vanderbilt pulls one out against Pitt. We'll get into that. But before we get to everything else, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at @door_report and Instagram door.report. Like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Our podcast is available on Anchor, iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. And while you're at it, give our podcast 5 stars and a review on iTunes. All right, let's get to our breaking news. All right, guys, no more game recaps or previews. Kind of sad now that you think of it, football season being over, but we've got breaking news to get to, and some of the news, guys, I think this isn't really a piece of news, but I want to start with the recent commits Vanderbilt got. Just kind of touch on those for a little bit here. Vanderbilt wide receiver commit Junior Sherrill. He's not a guy that recently committed, but he's been committed for a while. Lipscomb Academy, of course, receiver stud. I mean, his stats, you look at his production, you look at his film, he's a gamer, and he won Mr. Football Division II AA. The question becomes, guys, can Barton Simmons and company prevent him from following Trent Dilfer to UAB? Now, Junior may already have his mind up. He may not even be thinking about that, but I think that option for him is out there. Trent Dilfer has thrown an offer out there to him. He's thrown offers to, I heard 9 or 10 guys that were on that Lipscomb Academy team that may be moving to UAB now. So I think you got things like that you're going to be watching if you're a Vanderbilt fan right now. So, guys, I think he's staying. But again, if you're Vanderbilt, for Junior Sherrill, that's a guy you need to keep. I mean, just won Mr. Football. CJ Taylor was a guy that won Mr. Football. So for Junior Sherrill, if he stays at Vanderbilt, I think that's a sign of progress for Vanderbilt, because you're at a point where you can point to 2 SEC wins and say, hey, stay home, stay home with us, stay committed to Vanderbilt, as opposed to what a lot of players are doing in today's day and age. Will, as you just mentioned in the open there, they're following maybe the money, they're following their old coach, there's a lot of movement, guys. And so I think if Vanderbilt is able to navigate that, with a lot of different players, but we'll see here with Junior Sherrill, this is kind of a first step of, okay, can Vanderbilt navigate this? If they can, I think that's another showing, another point of progress for this program. And Will, I talked about it last episode. I wanted to hammer down the fact that this offseason, it'll tell us, more about the progress of this team, but this season told us about the progress. I mean, I don't think we need to see a whole lot more. Yeah, you want to retain guys. They're already retaining CJ Taylor. We're going to get into the Ray Davis departure. But, guys, I think Vanderbilt, how they navigate this NIL transfer portal age and recruiting, that's a big part of it as well. With Sherrill, that's going to be huge. I mean, if you can retain a guy like Sherrill and have him say no to Dilfer, his high school coach, I think that'd be a huge starting point.
Yeah. Well, there you go, Trevor.
No, yeah. I mean, I totally agree, too. I mean, I think – and I know I imagine there's going to be another recruit in particular that we're going to get into later on about in regards to getting a big offer. And it's going to be a real test for Vanderbilt to see if they can retain him. But I mean, I think Junior Sherrill, I think he's one. I went and saw him a couple times this year. Me and some buddies just went to watch him play.
He's a player.
He's going to get legitimate starting time as a freshman. He's going to get legitimate touches. He looks like one of those SEC receivers. And I'm sort of with you, Billy. I understand being a little hesitant of him going to UAB following Dilfer. I get it.
He hasn't proven anything down there yet.
No, the staff, Junior Sherrill, all these kids are a lot smarter than we give them credit for.
Yep.
I imagine he's looking at the staff that he's putting together and realizes that it's a Lipscomb Academy, but for a D1 football program. and maybe thinking in his mind, this might not work. You know what I mean? Well, with that being said, if he went to somewhere like UAB, I mean, I imagine I don't know their roster top to bottom, but I imagine he would be a number one, number two guy in that offense.
Yeah.
Um, he's not going to be a number one, number two guy his freshman year. Now he might. I mean, God willing, I hope and I really think he's going to turn into like a number one receiver as he progresses, and he's definitely going to get touches next year. But no, I'm right there with you. I think this will be a big challenge for Barton, and I think it's funny. I think sort of going back to Barton Simmons and his role at Vanderbilt. I think Vanderbilt fans need to realize that we are in a very fortunate position, and sort of going back to what you guys said with the portal, and they might not make a lot of splash plays in
Right.
this portal, big name stars. But if somebody like Barton Simmons, who developed numerous recruiting systems and was the guy whenever it came to like spotting talent, if even if he doesn't have the stars, even if he doesn't have the offer list, even if he didn't put up crazy numbers at his previous school, if he's got Barton's approval, then I mean, I don't want to say I'm going in with blind faith, but if Vanderbilt offers them and Barton's like, yeah, he's the guy, I think you're dumb not to be like, all right, let's ride, even if the offer list sucks, even if there wasn't much production at other schools or
Yeah.
wherever stars aren't there. I think he's one of those guys, and I think you're seeing that with Sherrill. Um, I think his offer list is starting to really really pick up. Another recruit that we're probably going to get into, he's
Pimpton.
starting to really Pimpton. He's starting to. I mean, Texas, the big one. I imagine he's going to get a recruiting bump
Yeah.
in
In-house
literally a matter
visit.
of seconds.
In-house visit tonight with Lustig and Lynch. So that's
I
huge,
did see
guys.
that, and that's big by the staff to see a Texas kid.
Yeah, to basically tell him, hey, we're coming to your house. You're staying at Vandy. Like, that's
Well,
that's
this
the
is
type
this
of
is also the thing. Pimpton is a great example of what I always talk about, which is if you want to talk to a guy that's really into like individual recruits and individual ratings of individual guys, you're talking to the wrong guy. I don't buy into that
who has
whatsoever.
offered him.
However, I buy into number one, the overall composite rankings at
Yes.
like large scale. You have to recruit to a certain level with your overall ranking compared to other teams. But individual guys are really hit or miss. It's like individual stocks versus ETFs. Overall, the rankings are relatively accurate, are the best judge of who is going to be successful in the field. But individual guys, I mean, the actual rankings, like you've seen Pimpton go from being, the number 600, 700 player 3-star to being a 4-star just because Texas showed interest. This is a great example of what we always talk about. These rankings are bullshit. They're all just they are meaningful initially.
Flawed. It's about who offers the kid.
It's about
Alabama.
It's about how they perform at camps, and then it's about if blue bloods are interested in them. It is consistent. It's not a fluke. It's not in your head. It is if blue bloods offer or they take official visits to these blue blood programs, they will receive a boost in rankings. That's just how it is. Because if fans don't like what they see on the 24/7 site in ranking, they'll go to the rivals board. If they don't like that, they'll go to the ESPN 300 board. Yeah, they're all different. You're seeing more and more variation as it continues, as they continue to shift towards pleasing the fan bases of the larger fan bases that pay their bills. It's like the bond rating system in 2008 and the housing crisis. I like comparing everything back to what I do every single day, finance. But it's all just bullshit. Outside of the large scale, take a step back, look where Vanderbilt is ranked in the overall grand scheme of things, 42nd. That's not great, but there is some individual talent. And what I'm more concerned about is CJ Taylor returning and Will Sheppard returning. Ray Davis was a gut punch, but I had my eyes on the transfer market, and I'm more of the guy that's, let's see where the dust settles when Penn actually hits paper on signing day.
And guys, I think this recruiting staff, we know how good they are. We know how big they are. I mean, how many staff members do they have on that recruiting staff? It looks like a lot. They already lost Smoke Dixon, I think, he found an elevation somewhere. So Barton Simmons has this ship headed in the right direction along with Clark Lee. So I don't think Vandy fans have anything to worry about in that department. But Ka'Morreun Pimpton is a great example of, if Vanderbilt can keep him in Nashville, that is massive. I mean, they're visiting with him as we speak right now, and Texas has just offered him. I think yesterday. I think it might have been today. But so that's what I'm pointing at, guys. This staff is strategic enough, and they're smart enough to know, hey, we need to go see this kid in person and talk to him. I don't know if Derrick Mason and his staff, he might have had 4 or 5 staff members on the recruiting staff. So those are some of the differences, guys, that we're already seeing. And Will, we've talked about this a lot. As soon as Clark Lee was hired, after the Barton Simmons hire, we said this is going to be a huge difference in this program, and you've already seen it. So we'll see about Junior Sherrill. We'll see about Ka'Morreun Pimpton. We'll continue to track those 2 guys and see if they stay at Vandy. That'd be huge. But, guys, a couple of commits to talk about. We'll start with 3-star offensive tackle Misael Sandoval. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but he's a kid out of California. Monster of a man, 6'6", 325 out of St. Augustine High School. He's got the size of an SEC lineman. Chose Vandy after decommitting from San Diego State. So not the most impressive offers, but I just wanted to throw that out there. He's a guy that, they're looking at measurables, guys. They're looking at, this kid's 6'6", 325. Maybe we can develop this kid into something special. So that's something they're looking at. But, guys, I want to talk about AJ Newberry.
You can teach form. You can teach technique. You can't teach size.
Right.
And absolutely.
That's what Vanderbilt's looking for, that on the line, and they're looking for the opposite of that at skill positions. It's pretty interesting to watch. They're looking for guys like McGowan, the opposite. They're not looking for size, they're looking for speed.
Yes.
And they know that speed is undervalued, just like on the line, pure size and strength is undervalued. So
yes,
Barton is evaluating this more like a GM, like his job title is. And it's weird because there's been a lot of news in Nashville with the firing of John Robinson as the GM of the Tennessee Titans. But the GM has as much of an impact on an NFL roster
as the head coach,
anybody. And the actual outcome on the field. And it's interesting to see how we just talked about that basically college football has become a free agency. And Vanderbilt, I think, was definitely, Trevor, you mentioned it, ahead of the curve in bringing in Barton just to manage
light years ahead of the curve.
Because it's one thing to say 20 years ago that a head coach at the college level is fully in control of every aspect of the team, every aspect of the roster. That is literally impossible. Now, with guys transferring, there's a separate tab on 24/7 Sports just for transfer rankings.
That's why Nick Saban has started to struggle.
Exactly. Alabama. You're seeing the cracks. It has to be run more like a professional franchise as college athletics continues to progress into being more like professional sports. And you're seeing it all across the board. And I think Vanderbilt was a step ahead with that. So we constantly criticize Vanderbilt on being a step behind everyone in all of college football and especially within the Power Five. But they were definitely a step ahead with the hiring of Barton Simmons.
And something to go on what you said about the offensive line and then recruiting size. Like you said, I totally agree. You can teach technique. If you get a kid in who's raw, that's fine. You can develop him. It's a lot harder for him to put on height and for him to beef up. And that's historically been a knock against Vanderbilt. As long as I've been a fan, Vanderbilt has always been thin on the offensive line, and they've always been really small. And now you have a kid who you just talked about his measurables. I think in high school, I think he played a little bit of tackle, so you can move him out there, but has the ideal size of a guard. And I imagine could be a really nasty guard too. Yeah. But if he has that, if let's say he's one of those kids, I haven't watched his tape much. Whenever he committed, I did, but let's say he does have that size to where you can put him on the outside and put him at tackle. Beautiful. You have a monster to protect your quarterback either at the right or the blind side. If you don't, put him in the interior and you have a monster in the middle of your offensive line. And that's something that Vanderbilt has, quite frankly, never had.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's refreshing to finally see a coaching staff and a recruiting staff be like, okay, we need some big boys in here.
Yeah.
We need some guys who before they even get into the program weigh over 300 pounds. That would be ideal.
Well, it's Moneyball in a post-Moneyball era when there's no money. It's the best teams produce the most NFL talent. Well, what measurables are the most consistent among NFL talent and what cannot be replicated through training and a weight room training program, and taking those measurables and reversing that out and starting from the bottom up. So you're seeing Vanderbilt take shots on guys like Darren Agu, who saw the field a lot early, and he was certainly not a heavily recruited guy, but just a freak physically. So he had some offers late, but a lot of this is weird. You're seeing Barton offer these guys, commit and or kind of trend in the Vanderbilt direction, and then later on schools are kind of realizing, oh shit.
Yep.
This is a diamond in the rough, because guess what? If a guy was getting a big elevation on the 24/7 rankings or on his scout ranking, guess who was in charge of that? The guy that's in charge of finding Vanderbilt's recruits. So you better believe that regardless of what you see on 24/7, you are getting the best 24/7 rated class that is possible at Vanderbilt, because you have one of the designers, I don't know what the right word is.
He was at 24/7 forever.
Creators, one of the reasons
the
that
Simmons brothers literally created the recruiting services. That's
I don't know enough about that story, to be honest.
Him and his brother literally created all of it. They're 24/7. His brother created On3. They are him and Chad are before it was just Scout, and then here come the Simmons brothers, and legitimately
Shannon Terry.
That's the main reason
Terry,
that I don't think we've been as critical of the recruiting, is because it's if Vanderbilt's bringing in these classes with Barton Simmons here, then they probably couldn't have done any better on the 24/7 rankings than they are doing right now. Yeah. And so it's you're sitting there with, okay, this is it. It's like what we said, or I said, Trevor, I think you were definitely a part of it at that point and the downtime. But when I said that maybe I was done if the Clark Lee thing didn't work out, because it was before we were always saying we need this, or need to see the administration do this, or need to see the staff's commitment here, or need to see them pursuing a recruiting class in this design. Well, they're doing all of that now. And I think the 2 wins definitely changed our perspective on that. But yeah, we haven't been as critical, but boy, I'm ready to start seeing some of these younger guys take the next step this upcoming season.
No doubt. And guys, we cannot take for granted Barton Simmons and this recruiting staff. I will continue to harp on that to fans, and Vandy fans are pretty blessed right now to have that staff. But guys, one more player to talk about: 3-star running back AJ Newberry, a kid out of Texas, 6 foot, 200 pounds, out of South Grand Prairie High School, chose Vandy after decommitting from Colorado. And I tweeted about this guy the other day. I said Barton Simmons might have just plucked away a Colorado commit before Coach Prime could even talk to him, could even get in contact with him. This Vandy recruiting staff is
underrated.
Elite. Now, I don't
know
about
the Texas boys.
No, I don't know if that's I don't know if that's true. It may not be, but I think there's a good chance. Barton Simmons said, oh, Deion's going to Colorado. Let me go try to pluck a couple guys from that recruiting staff, from that recruiting class that might say, I don't want to play for this Deion guy. I don't know if I'll play.
The Deion Sanders thing is insane, because Colorado is literally hiring him, banking that he's going to bring his son and attract current high-level recruits. It's this 4-year window that they're going to be really good, and then it is going to be a shit show.
Well, he might leave. He might leave.
It doesn't matter if he leaves. Deion Sanders is going to make Colorado relevant, or at least nationally on the stage, for 2 to 4 years. After 4 years, Colorado is going to be in an awful place. I just had to get that on the record, recorded somewhere, so that I could reference back to that I was right about that, because you can see it from a mile away. This is Colorado in a desperation move.
Yeah, It was a hell of a hire. But this kid is
great splash.
He looks legit. His other offers: Indiana, Nebraska, Cal, Georgia Tech, Tulane. So, Will, you talk about offer lists all the time. Pretty good list right there. Pretty solid. Top 50 running back in the country, according to 24/7. And guys, he's already rated in the top half of Vandy's current recruiting class. So he's already at the top half of the class. I've got a good feeling about this kid. Guys, Quinshon Judkins at Ole Miss, a kid that came in as a 3-star, probably the same height and weight as AJ Newberry, a kid out of Alabama that, I don't know how hard Nick Saban was pushing after him, but this guy kind of reminds me of a type of recruit like that, where he's talented, but he may not have all the offers that he wants. So he goes to a school where he can prove himself. This sort of reminds me of this AJ Newberry kid a little bit. I mean, I've seen a couple YouTube videos of him. There, I don't think he has senior film up yet. But guys, this is another type of kid where you see what Barton Simmons is doing, and he's being strategic, saying, "I'm going to attack that Colorado recruiting class where Deion Sanders." He may not take anybody from the current recruiting class. He may take all transfer portal guys. So another school is Nebraska, where their coach is leaving. Purdue, where their coach is leaving. So, they have opportunities there to say, hey, let me try to pluck a couple guys that may be wanting to play at a school like Vanderbilt, just wanting to go to a class or a program like Vanderbilt. And that's what AJ Newberry's doing. So, guys, I'm excited about this kid. I think Vandy fans should be. He's already rated in the top half of the class. This is another example of Barton Simmons and sort of his magic, sort of the development and the talent on that recruiting staff. So I wanted to throw that guy out there.
Also had to have it because that running back room went from
needed it.
Strength to looking very, very thin when Ray Davis announced that he was not going back and he was transferring. That went from being you have Ray Davis and Patrick Smith, who are going to take 98% of the carries next season, to you have Patrick Smith and Gillespie and Lutz, and Maurice Edwards is also, he already transferred out and entered his name into the transfer portal officially. So he's going to get an opportunity as a true freshman to see the field on an SEC roster. And I think that's definitely appealing. Same thing with at the tight end position. There is an opportunity to immediately see the field.
Pimpton will play.
End. Exactly.
Pimpton will get a lot of
immediately
time.
get.
And I guarantee you that's what they're telling him tonight. They're saying, listen, we just lost Bresnahan. Schoenwald is, he's Schoenwald. You could come in here and play, maybe start.
And in the transfer portal era, I think that's a more appealing offer than ever, because you're saying you're going to get the opportunity as a freshman versus before you would tell a kid, hey, right now you're a freshman, you'll come in, you'll redshirt another season, and then it's your time as a redshirt sophomore. Well, now you may have another dude that transfers in as a 5-star if you go to one of these other programs as a junior. And then all of a sudden you're exactly where you started. And then you're entering your name into the transfer portal to transfer to a school like Vanderbilt where you will have the opportunity for immediate playing time. So I think if anything, the modern college athletics it can only be good for Vanderbilt, because the old system certainly doesn't work for Vanderbilt. So this is where I see Vanderbilt fans on it all the time. I'll see the occasional one complaining or about NIL money or something going on with the transfer portal, guys transferring out. I'm like, well, guys, the last 120 years
haven't really worked.
The
out.
last 70 years have been pretty shitty. Like, I can't imagine it getting worse. So, like, maybe this new system, let's view it as an opportunity, because it like, you are the worst program in the entire conference. First off, it's inevitable. You're not going to be able to avoid it. And second off, you can't get worse than being the worst. So I think, if anything, this whole free transfer thing is going to even out the talent level in the long run. And I think that's going to be interesting when you have a team poised with already a GM well aware of where this was all heading. I think Vanderbilt's going to have an opportunity in the next – I don't think a big splash commits or big splash transfer guys, but actually building out a roster that is sustainable. And I think that's going to be a lot tougher than just pulling in splash 4- and 5-star guys or hitting the big ticket item in the transfer portal and getting a guy or getting a rental for a year. I think building a roster of guys that are going to be there and actually stay is going to become just something unheard of, and an aspect of a program that recruits look for. And I think Vanderbilt and Clark Lee and Barton Simmons have an opportunity to build that.
Yeah, I'll say that too. Something that we always harp on. I know, and Will, you brought it up numerous times, bringing up Ray Davis. Just lost him, obviously. Huge gut punch, as we all said, to the running back room. But I was right there with Will. I know one of the biggest knocks against Ray Davis was his speed. And so, like you said, with recruiting, what does Vanderbilt need? They need size in the trenches. And at your skill positions, you need speed, because you can't teach speed. You just got to get fast kids in. That's why Jaden McGowan was so good. And getting guys, particularly that are sustainable, like AJ Newberry, who are going to stay there for a while, hopefully, God willing. But what does AJ Newberry have that Vanderbilt needs desperately? Speed at the running back position.
He's explosive
I think we
too.
should. I think we should note AJ Newberry, Texas track star. He runs an 11.8 100-yard as a junior, and then ran a 22.21 200 as a sophomore.
Something about those Texas track stars. I think old Mike Wright also fit into that category, and certainly his legs were not the issue. We haven't even hit on the Mike Wright transfer and how much the national storyline of that has pissed me off.
Hey, we will.
Hold
right there, guys.
Good Lord.
Hold right there.
I could write an op-ed about that.
I'm glad we're all three of us are gonna agree on that. I already know we are. But guys, so AJ Newberry though, I have a good you ever just have a good feeling about a kid, even though you don't really know a whole lot about him. You look at him.
His tape is fun to watch.
Yeah, he hasn't even released his
tape.
AJ Taylor and McGowan.
Yeah. So, guys, recruiting is ongoing for Vanderbilt. I think I just saw an in-home visit with Demarion Thomas, one of the defensive tackle commits, and Lustig and Lynch are trying to convince Pimpton to stay in Nashville right now. So we'll try to keep track of recruiting. Portal. Let's go to the portal, guys. Before we talk about some of the positions of need and maybe some potential targets that could be headed to Nashville, plucked away by Barton and this team, Ray Davis has entered the portal. Saw him in Anthony's tweets last Friday night and thought there was a chance he'd be back. Fairly confident. We tweeted from the Doorport account saying it looks like Ray will be back because it did. That song, allow me to reintroduce myself. You thought that maybe Ray Davis was coming back, but guys, Kentucky is.
Do you remember me last episode, Billy, making the reference to being the ex with the trust issues that's been cheated on multiple times, and you're just waiting for the shoe to drop or the thing that just is going to come out of nowhere and be like, what?
That's it.
Like just the gut punch.
Yep.
That was it. I said it.
Yep.
And I think I spoke it into existence.
You manifested it.
I manifested it, but I knew.
This is on Will, everybody.
I blame you.
Why there was this little piece of me that was not riding 100% high because I just felt like there was going to be some back to reality moment, and it was that. So I had to just shift my focus to the fact that CJ Taylor was staying and that Will Sheppard appears to be staying as well. So those two things are massive. If Will Sheppard leaves, I don't know, just come to my address, Billy. You know where I live. You might need to check on me if Will Sheppard leaves.
If Will Sheppard stays, Will's going to be tweeting "Thank you, universe" again after you tweeted that last night after the Pitt win. But guys,
what we're going to need Will to say out loud that Will Sheppard's staying so that he can manifest this.
I just don't feel like that's going to work. I just feel like I was right on. It doesn't work with positive things. It only works with negative things. So I can't say something that I want to happen. I can only manifest bad things to happen. So, it's a bad power to wield because it's also it's terrible for me if anything I say like that happens, but it is what it is.
Ray, guys, he's from California.
Being stung on the lip by a bee. It can only happen to me.
Maybe in November.
Maybe Ray
goes like being sued by the Canadian press, Billy. Like we are currently being sued for an article that had a picture inside of it. We're being sued by the Canadian press for, I don't even know what the actual name, for damages because we used a picture with a copy. I just literally got off the phone with a legal assistant, not even a paralegal. They had an intern call us.
We'll get into that.
Know that
we'll get into that later. We're going.
I can't wait to get into that. Though.
We'll save that for the end.
Matter.
But
I've had guys, 2 margaritas. So.
But Ray Davis, he's from California. Maybe he goes to close to home to a school like UCLA or Cal. But guys, I want to ask the question: how does Vandy replace Ray Davis? You got to believe they're getting a running back out of the portal. You got to believe that's a must because that's what they did a couple of years ago to get Ray because they knew they needed to do that. Now, if you don't get a running back out of the portal, you're stuck with Chase Gillespie. I hate to say stuck, but you've got Chase Gillespie, you've got Patrick Smith, you've got a young kid in AJ Newberry still back there, Dylan Betts-Poly as well. So you've got young depth back there. But guys, would you agree they've got to get a running back out of the portal? I mean, I can't really
100%.
I can't think of anything else to replace Ray in his production. Because
No,
now you
yeah,
don't
you
have,
have
Go ahead, Trevor.
because now you don't have a running quarterback either to sort of counteract that.
I think you have to get somebody out of the portal. Arlen, I'm forgetting his last name, the guy out of Stanford.
Arlen Harris, yep.
Yes, he seems like an ideal candidate. If you don't get somebody out of the portal, you're gonna have to pray to God that Patrick Smith kicks it into gear. I think we can all agree
Which I
Patrick
think
Smith
he
had a off year
can.
last year. I was about to say that. I definitely think I'm a Patrick Smith truther.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in him. I think last year, obviously an off year. I think the suspension sort of coming in late in the season maybe threw a wrench in the thing. But I mean, I'm right there with you, Billy. You have to get somebody in the portal. If you don't get somebody in the portal, to replace Ray's production, I mean, you're obviously going to have to run a running back by committee, unless Patrick Smith has like a breakout year. But you're going to have to somehow get production from Gillespie, Patrick Smith, and I imagine AJ Newberry will be getting a lot of touches.
I mean, I think this offense is going to look drastically different than what we saw last season because number one, you don't have quarterback depth. So you're not going to want to put your quarterback in any type of situation in AJ Swann that he's going to be hit. So pretty much eliminate any type of that read option quarterback fake, allowing him to be hit because you're not going to want to put in a redshirt freshman.
Right. You don't have Mike Wright back there.
Exactly. Or Ken Seal. So number one is that. Number two, regardless, but especially if they don't get a running back in the transfer portal. But even if they do, this is going to be a passing offense. I mean, the strength is going to shift. It's going to be weird. You're just not going to have the horses in the backfield. But you're really kind of going to have to rely on these guys all taking a massive step forward, including Will Sheppard. But Will Sheppard's step forward is really going to be about the other guys taking a step forward. Quincy Skinner Jr., Jaden McGowan, Ka'Morreun Carter, a guy that we didn't see this year, Davion Walker, or at least see much this year. I don't think we saw him at all. These guys are going to have to be threats because this offense's runs, even though the O-line does have Julian Hernandez returning and that Grease gang, should be about as good of an O-line as we've had at Vanderbilt.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that's elite or anything, but it should be pretty solid. This can't just be a read option run style with the occasional pass style offense. It's going to have to be on AJ Swann's arm and on these guys on the outside. And that's going to be weird. It's going to be a big test. And the schedule, I know it's very early, but works favorably for Vanderbilt.
Get AJ comfortable.
A new style of offense and get AJ comfortable with the weapons on the outside. Exactly. So it's going to be interesting regardless of what happens with the running back transfer portal situation. But the plans for this coaching staff certainly changed when Ray Davis entered his name.
Yeah. And guys, they couldn't have been happy with that. I mean, obviously Ray Davis, he was attempting to get into Vanderbilt grad school. And that doesn't work out for him. He wanted to be back. He tweeted out that song. I mean, he wanted to be back. He thought he was going. Yeah, I mean, well, what did the tweet? What did the tweet mean? I mean, I know I'm reading tea leaves, but I mean, the guy. I think it's safe to say Ray wanted to be back.
I find it hard to believe with Diermeyer as the chancellor and with Candace Story currently in the amount they've invested into that field. I just personally. I know maybe they didn't have as many. I find it hard to believe that Ray Davis.
This is a grad school issue. That's a fact. That's a fact.
It's a fact. I don't know. That he's 100% committed to coming here. I know that there may be issues in the past. I just find it hard to believe that Ray Davis was committed to finding a program or getting accepted into it 100%, and then immediately tweeted out 1 hour after putting his screenshot of the transfer portal that he had an offer from Kentucky. I just find that hard to believe. But it could be the truth. Who knows?
I mean, I don't know that it's been
100% committed as well is different than saying, "Oh, I submitted an application and they didn't have my graduate field of study of choice." I mean, committed, wanted to be back in black and gold. I don't know. I'm just not buying that.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard he wanted to be back. Now, that obviously hasn't been publicly confirmed by anybody, but if you're Ray Davis, I don't know why if you're Ray Davis you wouldn't want to be back. I don't know why you wouldn't want to be back with Swann in this offense and what you did and the production you had in the SEC. Now we'll see where he ends up. I've heard Kentucky's throwing NIL money at him. There's sort of two sides to this Ray Davis rumor per se. One side of it is Kentucky is throwing NIL money at him. They were tampering with him late in the season or even after the season. They said, "Hey, we want you at Kentucky." That's one side. Now, maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. I tend to believe that didn't happen. The other side of it is Ray wanted to be back, and he didn't get into Vanderbilt grad school. And I'm on that side of the belief because I don't see any reason why Ray Davis wouldn't have wanted to be back. So, but then again,
because he's not an NFL back. He's not an NFL back. Kentucky saw him in that game. Ray Davis has recognized the fact he's not an NFL guy because he's not going to run the 40 that's required to be an NFL guy. Just is.
Right, but you keep saying he's not an NFL guy. I think Ray can develop. I think he can develop into an NFL back.
He doesn't have the 40. It doesn't
matter. He's a 4-star. He's a 4-star transfer in the portal right now. Like I think he could play in the NFL.
Okay. Well, this is one of the few times, Billy, that we disagree. He's just going to run he's going to run a 4.6 plus, which is all that matters. And I love Ray.
That's not all that matters. That's not all that matters. I don't like downplaying what Ray has done because
it's not downplaying. I'm just saying he's not an NFL guy. I think Earl Bennett was the best receiver Vanderbilt has ever had. I don't think he's the best NFL receiver or NFL prospect that Vanderbilt will ever has had. I think that's Will Shepherd. So I think those are two different things. I just think he's not going to run a sub 4.6 and a team's not going to draft him. And then he's going to be bounced around practice squad. So if he got offered significant NIL money, that's different for him than CJ Taylor. Because CJ Taylor or Orgy, which we don't know the status of Orgy 100%, are probably going to be first 1 through 3 round picks. And that's just not going to be the case for Ray Davis.
We'll see about Ray, but I do think he wanted to be back at Vandy. Didn't get into Vanderbilt grad school. I mean, that was the issue with him. And we'll see how Vandy goes about replacing him, guys. I mean, I like to believe Patrick Smith and Gillespie sort of by committee, this running back group could uphold that because you don't have a running quarterback, so there will be some added pressure on that running back group to carry the load in the running game and the production in the running game. So Ray Davis into the portal, that leads us to Mike Wright entering the portal. And of course, there's a lot of overreaction to this. We love Mike, guys. We love Mike, but AJ is the future of this program. It's plain and simple. There's nothing else to say. That we could stop it there. Yes, Mike has earned the opportunity to start. He earned the opportunity to start against UT after back-to-back SEC wins, but it's time for Vandy to build around AJ Swann and hand him the keys to the car. That's what Coach Lee has done. I wouldn't be surprised, we're not going to hear this from anybody, but I wouldn't be surprised to hear, something that Coach Lee, said to Mike Wright saying, "Hey, listen, AJ's our guy." I wouldn't be surprised if Coach Lee told him that. Now, I don't know if he directly told him that, but Mike is a smart guy. He knows AJ Swann is the future of this program. He gave Vandy all he had. I mean, Mike had a great stretch run of this season, down the stretch of the season. He'll get another opportunity somewhere else, and we wish him well. But I thought Clark and his staff guys did a really good job navigating this quarterback situation. And you touched on this a couple episodes ago, Trevor. The local perception of Mike Wright is honestly pretty funny. Bruno Reagan had a great tweet. He said, I see a lot of Nashville media don't even know AJ Swann exists. I mean, Ray Davis is a big loss, but guys, Mike Wright will be replaced by Swann, and this program is going to be fine. Like the local reaction was, the local reaction was just ridiculous from this. You can tell there's a lot of Nashville media that didn't watch Vanderbilt football this season. They may miss Wright's leadership in the locker room, but this culture is strong enough to counteract that with other guys like CJ Taylor, Will Shepherd, other guys that are going to continue to build this culture. So, I know we all agree on this. AJ Swann's the future. I saw a few tweets about, I don't understand hating on Mike Wright. We're not hating on Mike Wright. Like, no. We're not hating on Mike. He did a lot for this program this year, but you have to look at the fact of the matter and say they brought in a 4-star quarterback for a reason. They didn't bring AJ in to back up Mike Wright. for the next 2 years. I mean, that's plain and simple. So that's where it's at.
Yeah.
I know you guys agree.
And two, like, I don't want to like insult anybody or like question anybody's fandom particularly, but I did see like a couple of fans sort of have that same attitude. I'm going to be honest, this is just my opinion. If you didn't see this coming, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I don't even with Mike in that stretch, even after the Florida game, I was like, he's going to hit the portal. I mean, it's just like, and I don't want to act like I'm like a savant or anything like that, but I mean, AJ Swann is clearly the future. No, he's not as mobile as Mike Wright. I think that the offense is going to, like we just hammered on, you're going to see a change in offensive scheme to where you're not going to run as many RPOs. I think it'll still be a staple of the offense, but you're not going to have him. You're not going to really design him to scramble. It'll be too much of a liability. You're going to see like more of a traditional West Coast offense that we've seen at Vanderbilt for a really long time. But yeah, I mean, yeah, if you didn't see this coming, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I love Mike. I am very, very thankful for what he has provided to the program. I think he was a great ambassador for Vanderbilt. But at the end of the day, AJ Swann is the better quarterback. AJ Swann makes better throws. He has the better arm. Everything that you would like in a quarterback, AJ Swann provides that over Mike Wright. I mean, and yeah, the local Nashville media thing was so frustrating. Whenever I was at the Tennessee game and they brought in AJ Swann, then again, this dude was not a local Nashville media guy, but he's like, oh, they got the backup in. And I like leaned over and I was like, actually, like, if he didn't get hurt, he would be the starter. And he looked at me like I had three eyes. And I'm like, I get that you probably don't watch a lot of Vanderbilt football, but this is still like an SEC team, still a Power Five. Like, how do you like? Do you just like
this exposed the laziness of like we always like you're hitting on it perfectly. Fans are one thing. Like if fans aren't aware and they just looked at the box scores and said, "Oh, Mike Wright led them to their first," and just read that headline of their first 2 SEC wins and he's Vanderbilt's starting quarterback is transferring out. It's one thing if other opposing fan bases think that. Yeah. I saw articles written that way in everywhere. I saw tweets constantly from real blue check marks, not blue check marks like me. Anyone that watched or even kept up with what was going on inside of this Vanderbilt program, this Mike Wright transfer was inevitable and going to happen because he wasn't going to be the starter next year. AJ Swann provides so much more versatility of how you can utilize the pieces outside of your quarterback. And it just allows you to create a game plan that keeps defenses on their toes and guessing a lot more than Mike Wright provided. It's why Vanderbilt was able to beat a Kentucky and a Florida team that didn't have explosive passing offenses because Vanderbilt was able to be opportunistic and score, and then the opponent wasn't able to score in bunches. So this was going to happen, and it just pissed me off because I was like, this is your job to know this. And I saw people on SEC Network saying Vanderbilt's with the title on the screen of Vanderbilt's starting quarterback transfers underneath led them to their first 2 SEC wins. And that is just ignorant. And it's just intentionally placing drama on Vanderbilt's program that was unintentional, because I think everyone that's actually followed the program, this is not a departure even, and I'm not saying there's any negative thoughts. I tweeted out best of luck to Ray Davis. I want to see him ball out wherever he goes. I always root for these guys when they leave. He played hard for a year, but I mean, I think the entire fan base is rooting for Mike Wright, and I don't think Mike Wright has ill feelings towards Vanderbilt or the Vanderbilt fan base. I don't want to put words in his mouth. I don't know him, but I know Vanderbilt fans love Mike Wright for the most part, and every single Vanderbilt fan wants to see him go and succeed. He just doesn't have a Power 5 arm, and AJ Swann has an NFL arm. So it just is what it is. Being honest isn't being negative. Being honest isn't being harsh. I'm not saying that I hate Mike Wright because he doesn't have a Power 5 arm. I'm just saying he doesn't, and it's undeniable. And that's why he's not going to end up at another Power 5 program. He's going to transfer down. and that just is what it is there. So Vanderbilt fans knew this was coming. But the national storyline, it just put a bad taste in my mouth to see people that it's their job to keep up with SEC football just be completely ignorant of what's actually going on in Nashville.
I don't like saying this, but this is a positive transfer for Vanderbilt. I mean, this is not a negative.
I absolutely agree.
There's a lot of local national people saying, "Man, huge loss for Vanderbilt." It's not. This is a positive step in the right direction. I hate saying it, but you're giving the keys to AJ Swann. You're handing him the keys to the car, saying, "This is your program. This is your offense. We're catering to you. We're not gonna. Things are gonna get easier for us now. We're gonna be able to build around a potential NFL quarterback. And that's
it completely eliminates any talk of a quarterback battle. That's another thing that we haven't said. I think we don't have I don't know what that was, but we don't have an entire offseason to sit here and talk and have the 20% of the Vanderbilt fan base that's not on board with AJ Swann doesn't have time to constantly comment with every single incomplete pass that, oh, look, he doesn't have a great arm. I'm like, or every single pass that Mike Wright completes, look, he has a good arm. I'm like, a slant for 12 yards is not the reason or does not constitute a Power 5 or NFL arm. I'm like, yeah, of course he can make some good throws. He's still a college level quarterback. So I just think it eliminates all these other storylines on the outside and lets this team focus and move forward, especially now that Ray Davis is gone.
And as proud as Mike Wright, as Clark Lee is of Mike Wright this year, I guarantee you he's sort of relieved that, you don't have to deal with any more quarterback drama, because there was some of that. There was actually a decent amount of that this year. Okay, so Ray Davis out, Mike Wright out, Ken Seals probably out. Obviously not.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Who did before the season ended? Who would you thought it would have transferred out first, Mike Wright or Ken Seals?
Ken Seals.
I'm kind of shocked Ken hasn't transferred out yet.
He's probably waiting to graduate because he's graduating.
Well, I think that's why he stayed this year. Is he's got a? Oh, sorry, Billy. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean that's the reason he's and I don't know if there was some sort of agreement with the coaching staff that he wasn't going to play this year. You almost start to think there was, like, hey, I don't want to get hurt this year.
I'm in that boat.
I mean, why else would he have not seen the field this year? I mean, he
still has the red shirt year because
that's why he stayed. So, he's getting the Vanderbilt degree. He's going to transfer probably in January, February, something like that, probably go back to Texas. I've heard some North Texas rumors. I saw a tweet about that. So, good for Ken. I mean, he's going to go to a place and play. He's not going to go Power 5. Probably not. I mean, maybe he does, but I think he could go to a Group of 5 school and play. So, a lot of people were surprised, like, why have we not seen Ken Seals? Well, guys, we're not in the locker room. We don't know what's going on. So there's obviously something deeper there. I think that's it. But yeah, I would have thought Ken Seals, without knowing he's graduating, I would have definitely guessed he's the guy to transfer before Mike Wright. But guys, let's move on to CJ Taylor. He's back. Massive piece of news. I know you touched on it a little bit earlier, Will. That was a kind of an encouraging piece a few days after the Ray Davis and Mike Wright stuff cleared. And CJ Taylor is a guy that, he's from Tennessee. He's from McMinnville, Tennessee. He played at Warren County. Tennessee, you got to believe, was after this guy. There were definitely probably schools after CJ saying, come on, come over to another SEC school where, you can make some money, play in front of 80,000 fans. The fact that he stayed at Vanderbilt, I think, is huge. I think that's very impactful and says a lot about his belief in Clark Lee in this program. So CJ Taylor coming back, I think, is huge. Anthony Orji, probably. I mean, who knows, guys? I mean, he tweeted the same thing as Ray Davis. What was it, a week ago? I mean, I guess it depends if he gets accepted in the grad program also. I mean, who knows? Who knows about Anthony? But if Anthony does come back, that's another piece, man. You get Anthony back, my goodness. I mean, you start thinking about that defense next year and that linebacker core.
Miles Capers.
Oh my gosh. I mean, you start to for Vandy fans.
Yeah. I keep hitting on Davion Davis because I think we keep forgetting about him too. Undeniably, going into the year, that was the guy. Maybe Orji, But I think Davion Davis, like, that is the best player on that defense, the most disruptive guy, the guy with the biggest upside, definitely in that front seven outside of Orgy. And going into this year, and we didn't see any of him, maybe any snaps from Davion Davis this season because of injury.
Down the stretch, I think he played against Florida a little bit and a little bit against
He did,
Tennessee.
yeah.
Okay. But having
yeah.
a full season of him, I mean, that I think could be as big of an impact of anyone that's announcing their return on top of Mahoney. Another guy I'm sure you wanted to bring up, Billy, announcing he's going to return. That happened early. So I think that's also gotten lost in the shuffle is your best defensive back from last season is going to be returning, and pretty much the only bright spot in that secondary will be back.
Yeah, a common theme to look at, guys, is defensive players wanting to come back and play for Clark Lee. I mean, if you're a defensive player, why would you not come back and develop and learn from Clark Lee and that defensive staff, Larry Black, Lazinski, Howell? I mean,
unless you're Marcus Bradley and Daniel Martin, the two highest rated recruits that have come in under Clark Lee.
Yeah,
unless you're those guys.
I'm probably kicking themselves now at this point. But yeah, Mahoney back. So guys, you start to think about what this defense could be next year. Now, I think they need to attack the secondary in the portal. That's something, you have to do. You did that with Lucien last year, and I thought Lucien made a little bit of an impact down the stretch of the season. I mean, I'm not saying he was a world beater, but he started to find a little bit of consistency, but now Lucien's out, so I think you're going to try to bring in another corner in the portal, maybe a safety. Maxwell Worship's out, but you start to see guys that you look at guys that are positives heading out or negatives heading out. Obviously, Ray Davis heading out of the program is a negative. Mike Wright heading out, I'd say, is a positive. I'm not getting personal at all, but I'm trying to look at the facts and say Maxwell Worship heading out, probably a positive. Clear up some space for some young talent like that. So I just think, guys, as a car rolls by here, front yard, but I think you look at the defense and you start to think about how much better they could be, but a lot of it still depends on that secondary. What improvement do you see there? How do they attack the portal? You've got a guy like Martell Height coming in that I think could play a decent amount, because I mean, it's got to be easy. It's a piece of cake recruiting to this Vanderbilt secondary. If you're a DB or a safety, to look at a kid in the face and say, hey, you want to come start? You want to come play day one for us? Like that, so they're going to be young. I think Jadace Richards going to play a lot. I think you could see a little bit of Trudell Berry. You didn't see any of him this year. Maybe some Gumbo Gaskins. So you're going to be young, but they'll be talented and they'll have potential. But you got to expect, guys, they'll have to bring in either one or two experienced corners or safeties or both to kind of bolster that back end of the defense like they did with Lucien.
Yeah, the two positions to watch, running back and secondary, in the transfer portal are going to be the two areas
I would also
that
say tight end
to bring in. Yeah, tight end. Okay.
If Pimpton, especially if Pimpton decommits.
But to be honest, to be saying, and I know that the Ray Davis transfer changes everything of like perspective, because I would have been saying that tight end and secondary for how many holes this team had 2 years ago is a nice spot to be sitting in. But running back, does add an even larger hole, but still you've taken it from like, I don't even know where to begin with the current state of this roster to saying definitively right now, you need help in the secondary, which is a big hole. You need help at tight end and you need help at running back. There are areas, where the problems lie going into next season. And I think that's a step forward, that at least you know where the problems lie so you can try to address them in an offseason. This is the first time the staff has had that opportunity.
And guys, that front seven looks good next year. I mean, the fact that we're not talking about that front seven as a weakness anymore, that's a positive, Trevor. I mean,
yes, I think too. I mean, earlier this year, before the season started, particularly your front three or front four, to say
glaring
it looked
weakness.
paper thin was, understatement of the year. I think the front seven is going to look really, really good, guys. I think hopefully, I think we sort of hit on it. Hopefully you get somebody like Nate Clifton back. It sounds like you get somebody like Nate Clifton back. Of course, Davion Davis, Darren. I keep harping on him. Vanderbilt fans have fun because Darren is going to be a stud. You're going to see guys like Bradley Mann next year, I think, who didn't get a ton of playing time. I think you're going to see him as a really, really good edge rusher for Vanderbilt. Of course, the linebacking core, you're going to see a lot more Kane Patterson. You're going to see his younger brother Langston got some touches on special teams. I think he's really, really good. And I mean, I think the cherry on top that nobody has seen is Miles Capers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, out of camp, everybody said they're like, this kid's the truth.
He was the best. Yeah,
he was the guy. And I think too, I think the fact that and I totally agree. I think the fact that you have gone from, okay, before the season started, you thought, and I think rightfully so, you're like, linebacker is going to be the strength of this team, of the defense. I think it was. I think now, I totally agree with what Will said. Now that you're to the point to where you're like, okay, the front three / front four looks good. Linebackers look good. And I mean, in the secondary, I would like to get a cornerback. If they don't get a cornerback in the portal, I would be okay. I think you need to get a safety, though. I think you have to get a safety, though. And I would like to see them move Mahoney back to sort of like a DB, maybe throw him in an anchor, maybe like nickel, or like even like one of those, like, I mean, he's not big enough for anchor, but sort of like that hybrid that
and we heard
Oren Burks was. I think he could even play like sort of that position that Oren Burks was, sort of that X, where he's not big enough, but something out of that safety position.
I mean, I think you're also hoping the pass rush in that
improves.
Front. It's like what we always talk about is like the chicken and the egg. Is how much is the secondary the issue, and how much is the pass rush being unable to get pressure and make the quarterback uncomfortable the issue.
I
don't think we know that. I think the secondary took a brunt of the impact. The pass rush was better, but certainly lacking, especially against the better passing offenses that Vanderbilt faced. And that always makes a secondary look a lot worse when the quarterback is basically playing 7-on-7.
And
yes, but it was really thin though for a lot of the season. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's one thing. You obviously didn't have a lot of dogs up there. I think the front four is, I think the front four is going to take a huge step forward. I mean, I know Javon Hay is a part of that defensive line staff. I'm a Javon Hay guy. I think it's hard not to like him. I think you can make the argument he's the best recruiter on this staff.
I was just going to say that. Yep.
Yeah, you can make the argument he's the best recruiter on this staff. And he's an incredible defensive line coach. I really, really think the pass rush is going to take a huge step forward.
I mean, look at the guys that had success this year. Like Christian James, they developed him into a guy that made an impact. I mean, Nate Clifton,
a big impact.
Guys, Nate Clifton was a kid out of Brentwood Academy that, I think his only other offer were schools like Georgia State, Georgia Southern, and he's come into Vanderbilt and developed. Of course, he had to go through Mason, and now he stayed with Clark Lee and that coaching staff, and they turned him into something. I mean, that's the difference with this staff, guys. You saw so many recruits that just, didn't work out, plain and simple, with Coach Mason, and quite frankly, never really had a chance to with that coaching staff. But now they have turned in a pretty good majority of Mason recruits into serviceable players. Like that's something we can't forget about. And credit to those players. The Mason / Clark Lee guys, they deserve as much credit as the recruits on this staff or the player, that the recruits that Clark
Lee kind of, Billy,
brought in.
They had so many transfers, but that's the perfect example of the old adage and what you see constantly, which is if it's your team and a bunch of guys are transferring out, more than likely it's the current coach, getting rid of the guys that didn't fit the previous or were brought in by the previous staff and didn't meet the standards of the current staff. And if it's your rival, then they're losing all their talent and the program's in shambles. This is one of the few times I think when you saw so many transfers after Derrick Mason, and then you saw some more transfers when Clark Lee came in, and you've seen the trickle effect in the first couple of years of guys that were brought in before Clark Lee transferring out. The guys that stayed bought in and were better for it. And I think early on, it was one of the few times where we took a positive perspective of saying that guys that were transferring out just didn't fit the system or weren't buying in fully. And I think that was probably the right perspective. I'm always afraid to take that stance because you can always get caught viewing through the lens of your fan base and just spinning it positively. But I think for the most part, you haven't seen the staff hemorrhage talent from the roster, at least long-term talent. And I think that's most shown in Will Sheppard and CJ Taylor, because Ray Davis is going to be a one-year rental. I'm not trying to diminish Ray Davis, okay? I'm really not. I wanted him back badly, but that was a 1 year. He had 1 year left. So this staff did a good job of getting out the talent early. It seems like there is some type of culture being built. I hate when people are talking about like, he just has that locker room different. I'm like, a lot of that depends just on the vibe of how things are going. Like if this team would have finished 3-9, I don't think we would be discussing it the same way with the locker room vibes and the culture Clark Lee is creating. But we have that privilege now because they didn't finish 3-9. They finished 5-7. So there is some positive momentum moving forward. But I guess we will see. I just don't want to get too caught into the hype around that because there's still a lot of things and a lot of time left in this. I'm not even going to call it off season or recruiting. I'm just going to call it free agency in this college football free agency period. There are a lot of things that can happen that can completely change my entire perspective on how the season is going to play out.
Yeah, well, we shall see. There's still a lot that is going to happen. There's recruits that could potentially decommit. There's players that still could potentially transfer. And we have no clue. A lot of this episode has been speculation. Some of it, has been facts that we think are true, but we may not even know are true. So that's kind of what you get after a football season. I mean, you get a lot of speculation and a lot of fans jumping to conclusions, and we're trying to settle Vandy fans down a little bit, get back to the middle, as Coach Corbin says. But guys, real quick here, I don't want to spend too much time. Vanderbilt basketball. Let's hop into that. I don't think we've talked about Vanderbilt basketball at all, really. I mean, we kind of joked about it towards the end of last episode because that's how the season was going, quite frankly. I mean, Vandy defeats Pitt 75-74. Vandy improves to 5-4, not quite 7-4 yet. Vandy wins the Kevin Stallings Bowl. They almost blew it though, guys. I mean, that almost looked like a prototypical Stackhouse type blowing of a game. I mean, Tyron Lawrence got fouled with 1 second left. He hits both free throws to win the game. So credit to Tyron Lawrence. Congrats on Vandy for the win. But man, that was ugly. Pitt lost the game despite having 4 players in double figures, shooting nearly 50% from 3-point range. It's actually pretty impressive. Vandy found a way to win this game without Jordan Wright down the stretch. I mean, hopefully he's okay. Stackhouse said after the game he should be fine and ready to go Friday night against Grambling. So, I think Jordan Wright's fine, but Vandy sort of needs him to be 100% this year. I mean, you look at
Trevor, we mentioned my powers. This is how it works. All right. I truly believe it was right after Jordan Wright kind of was limping on the court. I said, Wright isn't right. And then he busted off a run where that was horrible phrasing. He immediately scored like 9 or 11 points or whatever it was. And I was like, okay, so this is how my powers work. When I completely lose faith, that's the only time that Vanderbilt can succeed. And then when my hope comes back, that's when Vanderbilt got down by 1 there at the end of that game after blowing an 8-point lead and basically having a lead for the entire second half, despite Pittsburgh at one point shooting close to 70%. I think it was from 3.
They were shooting the lights out.
Absolutely unconscious, as it is consistently against Vanderbilt. But the one thing that I think was shrouded in the fact that Pittsburgh was absolutely unconscious, Vanderbilt was the team that was quicker to almost every loose ball. They were the team that was getting the offensive rebounds. I think the announcers who weren't on site, that's a whole other rant that I can go on. Do
you blame them? Do you really blame them though?
Yes, I blame ESPN for putting a game on SEC Network and having broadcasters that were not on site, and it clearly impacting the quality of the broadcast.
Having Dame Bradshaw is bad enough.
That's already pretty awful.
Yeah,
he knew absolutely nothing about Vanderbilt. He was like
that
throwing.
Sucks.
Yeah, so
you can tell they're not on site when they get the numbers wrong consistently on foul calls.
Well, and
that's
there's
the
a delay.
Way to tell because they don't have the view on the referee. Yeah, They don't have
So-
the view on the referee is what seems to be like the most telling thing. The delay, they seem to do a pretty good job of hiding, but consistently there was one specifically where they just kept saying it was a foul on Liam Robbins, and it so was clearly a foul on Ansong. And they just kept saying it over and over for like 30 seconds, and that's when it really hit me. And for the rest of the broadcast, it was just pissing me off that they weren't. But what was I even talking about before, Billy? Before the broadcasting crew? Who knows? Probably not worth it.
Who knows? But
Who knows?
I honestly forgot.
Team shooting the lights out Memorial.
Oh yeah, that I think at one point the announcers had said that Vanderbilt had shot more than 20 more shots than Pittsburgh at one point in the game, and this game was won because Vanderbilt was grittier. I mean, I hate that word, but they were the tougher team. The 50-50 balls seemed to bounce Vanderbilt's way. And then at the end, I said in a tweet, it was going to be my last time mentioning it. Was that a foul at the end when Tyron Lawrence drove to the basket? If it was the other direction, I think we would have been absolutely pissed.
Yeah.
So I'm going to that's why I said thank you, universe. This doesn't make up for it. Like the debt against Vanderbilt fans and in my soul is still so far down. I mean, just Jeff Green walking like 15 years ago in the Sweet 16, that is enough for that to happen 100 times over in basketball games. But I'm not so sure that Tyron had a foul.
It was questionable.
Against him. It was questionable, but ice in the veins to knock it down. But this will be my last time mentioning that. Guys, do you think in your heart of hearts that was a good call at the end of the game?
No.
Thank you, Trevor.
No. I mean, I will say I think the fact that it was 3-on-1 made it look worse than it was.
It looked like he was going to foul.
Well, he went up strong, though.
But he never brought his arms. He never brought his arms down. And I think it was an anticipatory call by the Pat Adams crew in Vanderbilt's favor. I mean, I just think that is something to just hold our hands up and not question.
Yeah, but what Tyron did was, Stack said this after the game, he went up strong. I mean, he drew the contact.
Yeah.
Like, and great play by Mannion as well, because there was clearly nothing there on that initial
Mannion,
action.
guys,
Mannion, was just a one-on-one great play.
Mannion's a finisher. Like, as poorly as he may have played at times in that game and throughout sort of the season this year, last minute or two of games, he's been great. I mean, penetrating, getting big shots. I mean, he hit the game winner against Temple, I think. And so Mannion is kind of, a little bit of a love and hate, but, this team relies on the point guard more than most teams because that's the way the offense is run. You look at Pippen last year. I mean, Pippen was the offense, and Mannion, he's not the offense.
To a pure facilitator. Like he's an old school, like pure non-scoring distributing
Tinsley.
point guard.
Right. And if
different than Brad Tinsley even, because Mannion is like he'll shoot it maybe if he's left completely alone, but he is best case a mid-range shooter. He's even hesitant at the mid-range. So like it's weird, and I think Stack is going to take some time to start adjusting his lineups, because it's like every lineup Stack puts out there is with the assumption your point guard has the ability to score. And Mannion is going to slice to the basket and create for others on kickouts and dump offs, but he's not a scorer. I mean, I think your best, like, it's going to be odd to see Mannion hit the teens for the most part, but Stack's lineup seem to be shaped in a way that has Mannion scoring 15, 16 points a game, and that's just never going to happen. It's not his style of play. He's very fast, solid defender, and he's really good at drawing in larger defenders and not panicking. I mean, he got triple teamed when he dished it off to Lawrence, and it would have been very easy to attempt that shot or attempt that kind of wild layup there at the end, and he had the consciousness and self-awareness to dump that ball off to Lawrence to a bigger body player open underneath the basket. And I just think that Lawrence's clutchness has been overshadowed by the fact that Mannion completely improvised that. It looked like the secondary option was for him to be one-on-one and create, and Lawrence cut down to the basket, and Mannion was able to improvise and find him. But I also know another part was that last shot by Pitt was blocked by Liam Robbins. But how much of you watched Robbins' hand go down there and attempt to block that shot? And he did make contact with the ball, and it was a clean block. But I just felt a foul coming.
Yeah.
When his arm went down, he did everything you're not supposed to. But I guess when you're top 15 in the country in the NCAA in blocks. You don't have to follow the block rule, but it sure looked like
number 7, I think.
He broke the rule of hands coming down on the last second shot attempt from a team.
I'll say this. I think Liam was a little bit of a disappointment last year. I think, obviously, too, coming off an injury, that's tough. Liam Robbins is playing basketball at a very, very high level right now. I wish he would stop trying to shoot threes. And whenever he does make it, it feels so good. But he's shooting like 20-something% from the three.
I will say
really
like 3 of 14. So he doesn't have a huge. He was like 3 of 14 going into that game, I think, or going into the last game, and he hit one. But
he's playing really, really good basketball. I think we're starting to see Jordan heat up. It sucks that he's hurt, and I think Jordan sort of has that same energy as Ezra. As what you see is whenever Jordan takes it strong into the hoop, everybody crashes on him. We even saw it last night. You have to respect him going to the hoop. Everybody crashes on him. Yes, and then you dish it out to Miles Studi, whether he's in the corner, or even if you set up something for him at the top of the key. I think whenever you can get him in ISO situations or even clean shots, I think that's what happens whenever Ezra or Jordan drives. I mean, I think you even see it with Liam. Whenever you got Liam backing down somebody in the post, there's been a ton of times to where he's so big and he's so physical that someone's going to have to come off their guy and give help a defense, and that's going to leave somebody open. So I think whenever you do that, I think you allow Miles Studi to play sort of his style of basketball, which is sort of be that guy that shoot. I don't like him taking it up the court. I understand like sometimes like push comes to shove and he has to. I don't think that's his game, to be honest, but I think his game is to be that sharpshooter that dish it out, kick it to him, and just let him rain.
And I love Miles Studi. Dude, he is not involved. Look, I know, and I watch Miles Studi the entire time, because if he is coming off screens aggressively and other teams are having to focus on him, it opens up everything. It's like having a guy like Will Sheppard on one side of the court having the focus of the defense. It just opens up the other guys to look a lot better. That is Miles Studi when he is playing well. And he's still shooting well over 50% from three. It's no longer a fluke. I mean, this is getting to the point of
he's a shooter.
Absurd.
Well, I don't think it was ever a fluke.
I mean, I know, but early in the season, I mean, 50% is insane. Above 40 is considered a great.
It was like, okay, do it again this year.
Yeah, 50%. He shot like 43% last year. He's shooting 53, 54%, just repeatedly shooting and putting up these stats of like 5 of 9, 6 of 10 from three. He is going to be, as this season progresses, and he's probably going to be back next year as well, because I don't anticipate him being a leave early for the NBA type guy. He is going to end up being one of the most deadly shooters, and I don't say that lightly. I understand the history of Vanderbilt basketball. I truly do. I am a diehard fan. Miles Studi is going to go down as one of the best shooters and most accurate shooters in the history of Vanderbilt basketball. His jump shot is so pure. And you know what he has in him, Trevor, Billy? You know what he's got in him? He's got that fucking dog. He's got that dog in him.
He does.
I don't care. He's going. I see it occasionally. He is going at some point to get a technical at a bad time. He is going at some point.
He did it a lot last year.
It's going to happen. You need that. I would take that 10,000 times over
at certain times in the game.
Next game, I want you to focus on watching Miles Studi and watch what he does to every single player that guards him. He is in their head, and they are 100% focused on their emotion and guarding Miles Studi and not letting him score and talking shit to him. They're not even worried about what's going on in the rest of the game because he has them so riled up, and you need that on a team, especially when your guy that is your main scorers are Tyron Lawrence and Liam Robbins and Jordan Wright, who I know, Liam has a little bit of it in him. He did get that cheap technical that sent Stack on the big, gigantic tirade that went viral. But this team doesn't have a lot of big talkers and a lot of big personalities. And when your leading scorer in Jordan Wright certainly isn't a guy that's constantly chopping it up with the other team, somebody has to fill that void. Because if you've been on a basketball court before, it is constantly going on and somebody's doing the talking. It doesn't have to be your best player, but right now Miles Studi is playing like Vanderbilt's best player, and he's doing the best job of talking shit as well. He is a joy to watch. And Trevor, they were the golds for you.
That hey, 2-0 in the golds. I'll also say too, going off what you said about him, like getting like a dumb technical or something. It wasn't a tech last night, and I thought Billy was going to bring it up.
Dude, the hook and
that
hold.
Push. The hook and
hold. Did you see the shithead smile on his face into the camera? That was beautiful.
Miles Studi literally pulled him down to the ground with him. And then they called the foul on the other guy.
Camera and smirked. He looked at the camera and smiled because it was what I was talking about. He got the foul on the other guy, which I need to pull up all these clips that I'm referencing. But the guy that was defending him was constantly putting his hand into Miles Studi's chest when he was off the ball. And Miles Studi was repeatedly slapping it away. And then I saw him walk over, say something to the ref. And then the next time the dude did it, he put it into his chest and Miles Studi immediately smacked it aggressively and the ref called a foul on the other guy. And the other guy went irate. It was the same guy that they went to the monitor on that hook and hold or whatever they ended up calling where he smirked at the camera. It's just an aspect to this team that they were missing. And I think you finally have the guy that's just kind of drawing the attention, and that's just going to let Jordan Wright cook, which is what you really need. You need him to be the Batman to somebody's, or the Robin to somebody's Batman. But even if that's Studi on the outside, I mean, if Jordan Wright can take that secondary role of his lanes being opened up by a shooter, I know that's kind of in reverse, but it just kind of looks like, especially with him not 100% healthy, that is how this team is going to succeed offensively.
And the thing about Studi, the thing about Studi in that game, when Jordan Wright went out, Studi had a couple good drives, and he finished over defenders in the paint. And that's what we talked about in the season preview. I mean, we said, can he develop a little bit of a drive game? And I think he has. I mean, I think he has. So guys, I think that could be an added dimension of this team where Wright's out, Studi, go score. Like his off the dribble production is better than I think I anticipated, at least last night. Now he's got to keep that going, and I think that will help this team if he can do that. But man, I mean, you saw that. I think it was an and one late in the game with I think it was under 3 minutes to play. No Jordan Wright. You give it to Studi and you say go score, and that's what he did. So guys, we've been positive about this basketball segment, but most of this season has been, I know they have a win over Temple and a win over Pitt last night, and Southern Miss has actually turned out to be, I think they're 8-1 right now. So that Southern Miss team is actually pretty good.
I'm trying to find the tweet, but I think Robbie put out something showing the strength of schedule.
The net rankings.
Yeah, according to KenPom.
It's number 64. Number 64.
It's just, the main thing was just comparing to other SEC teams. And seeing like there's a big, it's the main reason that Belmont, they might be a little down this season, but like Belmont has a tough time or had a tough time scheduling out of conference opponents, especially Power 5 out of conference opponents when they were really, really good. Because why would you schedule a team with no name recognition that otherwise you can go schedule a Tennessee Tech? That's my alma mater, so I can throw shade. You can go schedule a Tennessee Tech, or you can go schedule ETSU on the years they're not good, or whoever the hell out in the Vanderbilt's Mississippi Valley State Delta that has no name recognition. Why would you schedule one of these teams that can come in and beat you very easily on any given night? So I think that's what Vanderbilt has done early. They're at the end of the season when they're struggling in the win total and everybody's pointing at 21 or 22 or 23 win teams and saying these teams should be in over this Vanderbilt team that has 17 or 18 wins. Well, that just promotes paying teams that are really bad at basketball to come in to hand you free wins, similar to what teams do in football with their out of conference scheduling. There's no benefit to playing these lower level, really good mid-major programs, but Vanderbilt loves to schedule them. I don't know if it's something they're doing intentionally to raise that KenPom at the end of the season, or if they just want to save money so they don't have to lose or pay money to lose their pay games like they already did once this season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think
go ahead,
I'll say
Trevor.
one quick thing. I think, and me personally, I've been very, very negative about the basketball team so far. Vanderbilt, if you look at their schedule, they have a real opportunity to beat. Obviously, I expect them to beat Grambling State tomorrow. Then they have NC State. That's probably their toughest non-conference game they have left. Winnable game. Lost to Colorado, I believe, but they have a chance to beat Grambling State, NC State, Alabama A&M. I don't even know what the hell this team is. And then going into conference play, South Carolina at home, then you go to Missouri. You could going into Tennessee
That's an easy start to the SEC season, by the way.
Going into Tennessee on January the 10th. Vanderbilt could be 11-4.
Don't look now. Don't look now.
I mean,
how dare you put that evil on Vandy basketball?
Don't let me start drinking the juice now. Not they
no, but
honestly, State, I'm going to be super pissed off. But I mean, that's what it is.
In all honesty, though, as negative as I've been, and I think we've all been negative. I mean, it's hard not to be. That was a big win. I mean, if you lose that game,
yeah,
losses start to pile up. You know, you lose to Southern Miss, you lose to Memphis, you lose to Pitt. Who else? St. Mary's, VCU. Brutal scene. I mean, we haven't even talked about that, and I don't really want to, by the way. But but guys, at the same time, a 1-point win over a Pitt team that we don't know how good they are, that you almost blew. That doesn't change my mind on the direction of this program. And I think this is a broader point that we can keep talking about throughout the season. But this could change in SEC play, like you said, Trevor. I think, like I said, it's a pretty favorable start to the SEC season. Maybe you get out to a good start in SEC play, but you start playing the monsters like Arkansas, Tennessee.
Oh yeah,
Kentucky.
I think it's still going to get pretty ugly, to be honest with you.
Vandy is.
I hate to play the who played who game, okay, because it's early in a basketball season. But that Pittsburgh team lost to VCU earlier this season, and they beat NC State as well. So I think, like you said, that's going to be a good win. The only one of these losses that I look at are the ones that are going to be posted on the end-of-year bracketology, that are going to be posted as good wins or bad losses. And the one that we haven't touched on enough is Southern Miss, which was a very bad loss. It's really the only thing that's happened in this whole out-of-conference start to the season that I would say is really bad or really good, is losing your pay game at home to Southern Miss. And that's going to be something that's going to haunt this team. But almost you can say they offset it with that win over Pittsburgh, because I think you sit a lot differently with the same side of that Southern Miss game is going to be viewed at the end of the season like that was a really bad loss. I think this Pittsburgh game is going to be viewed as a benefit to this team on their NCAA tournament resume. But I don't want to spit too much positivity, because this SEC schedule and this SEC this year, my God. I mean, there's some very, very talented teams, especially up at the top. Trevor, you mentioned Arkansas, said you were afraid it was going to get ugly. I think Vanderbilt presents unique challenges to teams this year. I think that they're going to be an interesting team to watch in betting markets, because I think that they're going to be size-wise a lot bigger than a lot of teams that they play this season. I mean, they were so much bigger than Pittsburgh. And I don't know exactly where Pittsburgh ranks out in overall height stats in the NCAA, but they had a clear size advantage that showed up and won them that game with second chance opportunities and getting to loose balls. Length and height sure make a team also look like they're getting a lot more of those 50-50 balls. I know effort was there. I already complimented that. But Vanderbilt is a very long and tall team, and I think that's going to present some challenges to teams that overall basketball is not shifting the direction of having 3-4 guys that are close to 7 feet tall that consistently are rotated in and out of the game in QMB, Liam Robbins, Lee Dort, and Malik Dia.
Yeah,
and Ansong's arms are like 19 feet long as well.
Yeah.
He reminds me of Lance Goulbourne. Everybody's been throwing comparisons out there. Emmanuel Lansdowne reminds me a lot of a young Lance Goulbourne. And Goulbourne developed a little bit more of an offensive game later, but he also had those long arms. He was a grinder early in his career. He just pulled down every single rebound that you could imagine. Ansong has something. He's not I know he's a transfer from, where was he from? Wisconsin, Green Bay, I think. But Ansong provides this spark, and he actually buried a three that was pretty key in that Pittsburgh game. So you love to see that.
Love to see it. Guys, there's pieces on this team. I mean, that you can't deny that. You've got a kid like Liam Robbins, who is an NBA player. You've got a really good college player in Jordan Wright. You've got one of the best shooters in the country in Miles Stute. You've got talented freshmen. So the pieces are there. But is there enough? Is there enough gelling? Is there chemistry? Is there culture? Is there coaching? Coaching is the biggest thing here, guys. There's a lot of really good SEC coaches that, say Vanderbilt has the height edge or they're dominating points in the paint. You could have another coach on the sideline that's just better. And so I think this is where we're going to learn a lot about Stackhouse in this SEC play. And he's got the opportunity. It's right in front of him. And Vanderbilt fans are kind of sitting back waiting. By the way, that crowd was awful against Pitt. It was awful. And we've talked about it. And now I wasn't surprised it was awful. But that's something that needs to be raised. The program is not headed in the right direction right now. I say they make the NIT again. They're going down that road again of next year, we got some sophomores coming in. They're going to be good. It's just, you need something more, in this it's the fourth year of Stackhouse. You got to see more. And it starts NC State, that game in Chicago. That's a big opportunity. SEC play, guys, go beat a Tennessee, go show that you have made that progress. So there's still a lot of games to be played, a lot to happen. I do think that was a big win, guys. I do think it was, but there's still work to be done. Like, I don't think that win makes a huge difference in the perception of Vandy fans' minds of this program and the direction of the program. So we'll see, guys. There's just there's no oomph. There's no buzz, right?
I think there was a lot more negative that could have been created with a loss than positives are created with a win, especially how they won late. I think it's the big thing. But Billy, I'm the perfect example. I'm about as diehard of a fan as there is, and I don't live far away from Memorial Gym. If this team was 6-2 or 7-1 instead of 4-4 going into this game, I would have been there at the game. But if it's a weeknight game, and I'm going to make the commitment that will be my entire evening after work, on top of spending money, I'm going to buy tickets, drive down immediately after work, go to that game. I'm not going to go down when there's the chance that they're going to come out and lay an absolute egg, which is what they have done a majority of the time over the Stackhouse era. So I think basketball will trend and shift a lot quicker than football will if they win. Also, the scale of success is different. Like, you're actually fighting for an NCAA tournament berth versus just being happy with the 5-7 season. But you're trying to fill a 14, 15,000 seat gym versus a 41,000 seat football stadium. And you have more recent success and a more built-in fan base. So it's literally just win. It can be this season. But I promise you, if this Vanderbilt team rips off 5 straight wins, whatever the next home game after 5 straight wins will be packed. And that's just how it is in basketball, whether it's high school, whether it's the best program in the country outside of the very few elite ones. You saw it with Tennessee basketball. Tennessee basketball, nobody gave a shit about Tennessee basketball up until the last 5 years, and when they had Chris Lofton. I remember back in the day that it was literally made fun of by Tennessee fans, that Vanderbilt fans would talk about basketball, and Tennessee fans would say, nobody cares about basketball or baseball. Everything in the SEC is football. Now, all of a sudden, this Tennessee basketball program and the baseball program for Tennessee have taken a step up and are much better. Now their attendance, everything is sold out. Imagine that, because winning cures all. Marketing, all the redos to the arena, whatever complaints fans have, it doesn't matter. That's to get recruits in the door, to put wins on the board, because fans want to go watch wins and winners. That's literally all that matters. So I saw some comments about the players deserve more. Win games, you'll get more. I promise.
Mm-hmm.
And the point needs to be raised that this program has fallen quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you look at the crowd against Pitt. I'm not trying to be overly critical. I'm trying to look at what is happening with this program. It's sad. It really is. And I think it's a discussion we need to have, long-form discussion, saying, why has it fallen? Why has it fallen this far? Is it coaching? Is it recruiting? Obviously, winning plays a role, but why? Why has that happened to Vanderbilt basketball? So I do want to have that discussion. But guys, for Vandy right now, say they start off, 2-0, maybe 3-1 in the SEC. Tennessee and Kentucky come to town, and there's momentum with the program. If Kentucky and Tennessee fans still overtake that gym, that's when we have that's when there's a problem. Like if Vandy starts well
Kentucky
in the SEC,
fans will take over the gym regardless, because it's been a thing for years that they buy season tickets just to go to the Kentucky game. So Kentucky fans will take it over. If Tennessee fans take it over, I'll be disappointed.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm saying from a broad perspective, you cannot have just a takeover. Because that has happened. Tennessee fans took over Memorial Gym in the Bryce Drew when Vandy was 0-5, Tennessee was 5-0. I mean, that was probably 70-80% Tennessee fans, and obviously Vandy's probably not going to start 0-5. But from an overall perspective, you just don't want to see that. So, guys, up next, Grambling Friday night. That should be a win, but you really never know with this era. Then they don't play again until next Saturday versus NC State. Legends of Basketball Showcase in Chicago, and then a couple cupcake home games, and then SEC play January 3rd, Mizzou and South Carolina, I think you said, Trev. So favorable. Pretty favorable start to the SEC play. But, guys, I think that was the longest episode of TDR ever. That'll do it. For episode 196, still a lot of football to get to. We'll talk more about the portal coming up. Vandy football recruits. We may wake up to some good or bad Ka'Morreun Pimpton news, and hopefully Junior Sherrill he stays in Nashville. But without further ado, you've been listening for episode 196 of the Door Report, powered by Alaco Fine Wood Floors.